So I keep getting asked a lot of questions on here, and I thought it might be easier if I just made a video answering the more frequently asked questions that I get. The first question, obviously, is did it hurt? The simple answer is yes. In the beginning, stretching your labret is not that easy. You have to use a taper, and it's pretty painful. It's kind of an odd pain. It's not like being pierced. It's just a very uncomfortable pain. It's not terribly pleasant. So yeah. The next question that I get asked a lot is, how do you go about stretching? Like, what's the best way to get a big labret? How do you do it? There's basically two ways that you can get a big labret. You either stretch it up from a smaller piercing, or you get it cut or dermal punched the size you want. I stretch mine from a 14 gauge piercing. There's pros and cons to both. It really just depends on what size you want, your anatomy, what you're going for, how fast you want to do it. There's all sorts of factors. For stretching, it's basically the same as stretching any other piercing, but lips do heal faster, and they tend to loosen up better, at least in my experience, than, say, your earlobes. In the beginning, if you're stretching from a small size, you basically can either use a taper, or you can wait and hope that your labret loosens up enough on its own that you can put in the next size. Generally, though, you're probably going to have to use a taper to help it in, because it's not going to loosen up enough. At least it never did for me. So yeah, it's not fun with tapers, but as long as you take it slow and use some lubrication, some sort of oil. I use vitamin E oil, but there's other oils that you can use. As long as you have it lubricated and you take it slow, you should be okay. Patience and listening to your body is like the best thing you can do when stretching any piercing. You don't want to rush it. You don't want to force anything. Once you get to a larger size, like 6 gauge or 4 gauge, you can start using either bondage tape or PTFE tape. You tape it around the plug and like one layer, 2 wraps at a time. That way you can stretch at much smaller increments. I mean, often sizes from gauge to gauge vary between like at least 1 millimeter, sometimes more, and most of the time that is much too big of a jump. It's a lot easier to go way smaller than that. Even 0.5 millimeters can feel large. So when taping, it's a lot easier. At that point, it doesn't hurt anymore either, because you're not forcing it as much, you're not putting as much pressure on it, and it reduces pretty much any risk you have of irritating or damaging your piercing. Let's see. I also get asked if, like, what risks there are. Like, will it close, and, what sort of damage it does to your teeth. For closing, it really depends on your body. Everybody's different, and so there's no, like, set rule on, like, if you stretch it this far, it's not going to close, or anything like that. Labrets do tend to shrink a lot better than other piercings, just because of all the blood flow and the tissue is different. So if you do stretch, you do have a much better chance of it shrinking than, say, your earlobes. I have seen a lot of labrets, like even really big ones, up to like an inch, inch and a half, close all on their own and have minimal scar left. You can also get it sewn shut. I've seen this done too, and there was very little scarring. So as long as you go to a professional for that, somebody who really knows what they're doing, and you take care of it, you should be fine. So, I mean, no matter what, there is usually a way that you can close up a piercing, especially labrets. There's a lot of ways you can do it, but, with any modification, especially stretching, you gotta look at it as a commitment, and something that, you could be stuck with, and that you could have scars from, or a hole for the rest of your life. That's something you should definitely take into consideration before doing anything. As for, like, damage or any, like, risks or things that can go wrong with having a large labret, again, it really depends on the person. Like, it depends how big it is, it depends what kind of jewelry you wear, it depends on your lip, it depends on a lot of things. The biggest risks, the biggest, like, side effects, problems with a labret are probably tooth and gum damage. It can cause extensive damage depending on how much it hits your teeth and gums. You know, some people, like, they lose their teeth. They fall out. You know, a lot of tribes, like African tribes and other tribes, they would just simply knock out their teeth because that way they would have room for a very large labret. And some people still, you know, in America and, you know, other countries still choose to do this. But otherwise you can have gum recession, you can have chipped teeth, you can have all sorts of dental problems, and so it's definitely something to be aware of. To prevent it, you can always try softer jewelry like wood or Teflon, PTFE. That's less hard on your teeth than, say, glass would be. Also, you can experiment with different shapes of the backing. You know, concave T-backs are good, and if you try to, like, sand them down a bit, try to fit them to your lip as best as you can, it can definitely prevent damage. But in the end, most people with a larger labret are going to have some sort of damage in the long run. The other problems that come along with it are food-related problems, you know. Whenever I eat cereal, it dribbles. And I can't eat apples. I have to cut them up. You know, when you get larger librets, some people can't even eat like a sandwich. They have to cut that up. But it's not too bad. The only other thing is, like, I have a slight lisp, which you can probably hear. I don't think I had that before my labret was as big as it is now. That's another risk. You know, if it gets bigger, it's going to change your speech patterns. But other than that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's a risk or troublesome. I think that's, like, the main questions that get asked. So, if you guys have any more questions, you know, just ask, and I'll answer them or make another video.